For 34 years, she knew exactly who she was at 7 a.m. on a Monday. She was the director of operations. She was the one people called when something went wrong. She was the person who walked into a room and knew her place in it. That was 6 weeks ago. This morning, she stood in front of her closet for 11 minutes. And she couldn't figure out who she was dressing for. Diane was not someone who lost herself easily. She had built her identity deliberately over decades. Educated, accomplished, known. In every room she walked into, someone knew her name and what she was capable of. And then one Friday afternoon, with cake and flowers and a card signed by 60 people, all of that stopped. The first time someone asked what she did at a dinner party, 3 weeks into retirement, she said, "I'm retired," and felt the words land strangely. Not wrong, just unfamiliar, like wearing someone else's clothes. She smiled and changed the subject, but driving home, she kept thinking about it. If I'm not the director of operations, who am I? Here's something most people don't think about until retirement forces them to. Identity is not one thing. It is a collection of things. Your values, your relationships, your personality, your roles, your history. But for most working adults, one of those circles becomes so large over decades that it quietly absorbs the others. The career circle expands until it overlaps everything else, until your friendships live inside it, until your daily rhythm is organized around it. Until the question, "Who are you?" and the question, "What do you do?" have the same answer. This isn't a character flaw. It's what happens when something takes up 40 to 60 hours of your week for 30 or 40 years. Of course it becomes central to your identity. Of course removing it leaves a gap that feels enormous. The mistake is thinking the gap means something is wrong with you. The gap just means something significant ended. And something significant ending always leaves a mark. There are 3 specific ways people lose their sense of identity in retirement, and understanding which one you're experiencing changes what you do about it. The first is role loss. For most of your career, your role gave you instant social context. You were the manager, the teacher, the engineer, the nurse. That role told other people who you were, and it told you how to behave in any given room. Retirement removes the role, and with it, the social script that came attached to it. Suddenly, every room requires you to figure out your place from scratch. The second is routine loss. Identity is not just about who you are, it's about what you do. Your daily and weekly routines were the behavioral expression of your identity. They gave you a felt sense of self through action. When the routine disappears, the felt sense of self goes with it. This is why so many people in retirement describe feeling like they're floating. Not sad, not happy, just unmoored. The third is status loss. This one is the hardest to admit. Work gave most people a form of social status, a place in a hierarchy, a title, a level of authority. That status was part of how they understood their own value. Retirement removes it overnight. And while intellectually most people know their worth isn't tied to a job title, emotionally, the loss of status can feel like a loss of self-worth in ways that are difficult to articulate and even more difficult to admit out loud. 8 weeks into retirement, Diane had lunch with a friend she'd known since college. Her friend had never known her as the director of operations. She'd known her as Diane. The woman who laughed too loudly at her own jokes. The woman who could spend 3 hours in a bookstore and call it a productive afternoon. The woman who had opinions about everything and wasn't afraid to share them. And sitting across from her friend that afternoon, laughing too loudly at her own joke, Diane felt something she hadn't felt in 8 weeks. Like herself. Not the director of operations, not a retiree, just herself. And she realized something sitting there. The career had been layered on top of her identity for so long that she'd forgotten the identity underneath it was still there, intact, waiting, just a little dusty from decades of being overshadowed. Rebuilding identity after retirement is not about finding a new career or staying busy. It is about excavation, going back underneath the career to find what was always there. The first thing that helps is separating what you did from who you are. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left, write everything your career gave you: title, routine, status, income, colleagues, purpose. On the right, write everything that is true about you that has nothing to do with your career: your values, your humor, your relationships, your curiosity, your history, your loves. The right side is your identity. The left side was just the container it lived in for a few decades. The second thing is finding new containers. Identity needs somewhere to live. It needs expression through action and role and routine. The work of retirement is not recovering your old identity. It is finding new places to put the one you already have. A volunteer role that uses your skills, a community that needs what you know, a creative practice that expresses who you are, a relationship that sees you fully. Any of these can become a new container. None of them have to be as large as the career was. They just have to be real. The third thing is patience with the excavation. Most people who navigate this transition well report that it takes a full year before they feel like themselves again in retirement. Because identity reconstruction is slow work. It happens in small moments, a conversation that lights you up, an activity that reminds you who you are, a morning that feels purposeful without being scheduled. You cannot rush it, but you can trust it. Diane still stands in front of her closet some mornings, but she's not confused anymore. She knows who she's dressing for: herself. Not a title, not a role, not a room full of people who need something from her. Just herself. She volunteers 2 mornings a week at a literacy program, teaching adults to read, using the same skills she spent 34 years using in boardrooms. She joined a book club on Thursday evenings. She calls her college friend every Sunday. Small things, but each one is a thread being woven into something new. And slowly, without her quite noticing when it happened, the answer to "who are you" stopped feeling like a question she didn't know how to answer. If you are in that closet right now, standing in front of your life, wondering who you're dressing for, know that the identity underneath the career is still there. It did not retire when you did. It is just waiting for you to remember it. Leave a comment and tell us, who were you before your career defined you? We read every single one.